Hello, I'm Odin, and today I'm going to continue building on my Mechagodzilla cosplay. And today what I'm going to make is the lower body for my 1974 Mechagodzilla. I found it odd that this one section of the costume gave me as much stress to build as it did, nearly as much as making the head. This one simple looking piece will not only hold the legs up, but will also be the attachment for the tail. I think it needs to be somewhat strong. To make sure that the sizing is correct and so I can get an expert opinion, I asked Felicia to help with the measurements and pattern making. We did this during our weekly Sunday live stream right here on YouTube.
We got a mecha butt problem.
Yes, we have a mecha butt problem.
I was gonna help you pattern the butt.
I appreciate that.
So yes. That's what we're gonna be working on today.
Excellent. So you're gonna measure my butt live on the internet.
Well, actually, we don't need your butt's measurement. We only need the...
Okay, the bottom of the thing.
Yeah.
We measured the waist for the upper body and my thighs.
This is with ease, I'm gonna say 36 around.
Okay. And the crotch depth, which is the measurement you get when you run a tape measure from the front waist through your leg's crotch to the back waist. Felicia is a pattern maker by trade. Having her experience and having her attitude of, you just do it like this, is very much appreciated. There's no dart here, right? This is flat? This is a...
The center back, no dart. Center front, there is a dart.
So I could make this from one piece?
Yes.
Okay.
And then it's a sturdy surface to attach a butt to. Because you could build up around it and...
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Anchor from inside.
Right.
Get some good washers, the 3-inch washers from the inside. Anchor it down with 4 bolts.
Right.
And then you attach it there. But that's a lot more work than probably necessary.
Well, it is going to be a hollow foam construction, but still... It's going to have leverage. It's still going to have weight. It's still going to have leverage.
It still need to be anchored.
Right.
To
In fact,
the butt piece.
I should almost make the butt piece out of the foam because of the tail, and make the front out of HD foam for flexibility.
Different properties, right?
Different properties,
and
yeah.
Different fabrics. Do you want out of that vest?
Sure. Let's get out of this.
I'm just leaving you in here laughing.
Oh, it's fine.
Oh, it's not.
In the pattern, Felicia included sewing ease, which is the amount of fabric used to stitch pieces together. And she included some extra around the top edge, a minimum I would need for the waist cover. Let's make it 3 1/4 consistent. Okay. Well, since foam was glued seam to seam and not sewn with overlapping layers the way fabric is, I modified the pattern to be just what I needed. This can actually be 2 different pieces because everything gets covered. I don't have to stress out about cutting this out of a single piece because this seam is covered. This has to be a seam, but this seam is covered. Okay, that's good. So I can cut this out of smaller pieces. Great. Do I have smaller pieces before I cut in my big stuff? I cut out 2 copies of the front pattern, a left and a right side, from some 6mm HD foam. I glue the seams together with contact cement. Almost everything in this build will be glued with contact cement. When the wet glue is mostly dry, I can stick the 2 pieces together. The curve in the front seam makes the foam curl back, like the crotch on a pair of jeans. For the back side, I'm using a much denser and stronger foam that's called What the Foam. It's still 6mm thick, and it should be strong enough to support the tail without too much bending. The one thing that it did on all of these pieces is mark where the belt line will go. Even though there are different types of foam, contact cement still sticks them together without a problem. And for all of these connections, I used 2 coats of contact cement. The extra thick layer of glue really is a stronger bond. And just to be sure that the side seams hold, I also glued some 2mm What the Foam over each of the seams. The crotch needs to go together, but the tail is what will connect them. You need to put the dart in it, in the back. So it was very intentional to make the front out of a different type of foam than the back. I wanted the front to be HD foam because it's going to give more. HD foam compared to What the Foam is a much softer foam. HD foam is a pretty dense foam and it's much nicer than craft foam and it's much nicer than most of the other foams, but it is definitely softer than What the Foam. What the Foam I wanted it to be harder because, or denser or whatever. I'm gonna have to build a tail off of it. So this needed to be strong enough to be able to support the tail. This I wanted to give, so if I was walking, it would kind of flex and move with me walking, right? So that's why there's 2 different bits of foam. I think I want to put this into the back, even though Felicia didn't think it was needed. I think it is because of the properties of the foam. Then I can start worrying about a few other things like the belt. I cut in what will be the first of 2 darts that goes on the back, just to get a curve on the foam. 2 coats of contact cement layer, and I have a curved seam. The belt is easy enough to make. It's 6mm HD foam cut to 2.5 inches wide. Long strips like this is a good excuse for me to use my rail cutting tool from Cos Tools. I can make the belt from 2 strips because I can hide the front and back seams behind some details. When I glue the belt on, I start in the front and work my way around to the back. The front belt seam is offset from the crotch seam. Any extra bit of layered strength I can get is good. I cut the halves a little long so I could trim the ends for a correct fit. Now the back seam is going to be hidden under the middle back fin. You can see I marked where they'll go with wet acrylic pen. I've got 3 fins I got to make. One of them's big, so I need to look at how the fins were done, so replicate those. There's just that. All right, yeah, no, there's not much to the back piece. There's not much to this kind of at all. The tail is what attaches. Okay, that's kind of cool. To make the fins, I measured the size of the item on the toy. I decided my scaled up version would be 1mm of toy scale, equal to 1/2 of an inch in cosplay scale. I made a pattern from cardstock and traced the outlines of the fins to HD foam. The outer 2 fins are made up from 2 layers of 10mm foam inside of 2 layers of 6mm foam, which makes them 32mm thick. And the center fin is just 4 layers of 10mm foam, so it's going to be 40mm thick. Because of how thick the pieces are, it's much easier to cut the shape of the fins out on my bandsaw. Also, cutting them after they're glued in layers gets me the edges that perfectly match. I could never glue pre-cut pieces together and have all the sides line up perfectly. Once the 3 fins are cut out, I tilt the table on my bandsaw to 45 degrees. And I cut a bevel into the outside edges. I just keep the blade lined up with the center seam of the layers. The bandsaw blade that I'm using is a scalloped blade. It's different from a typical saw blade. It's shaped more like a bread knife, and it gives a really clean cut edge on foam. But it costs a lot more than a normal blade, and I can only really cut foam on the saw now. So if you want a blade that's good for foam and other stuff, you'll probably want to get a variable pitch bandsaw blade. I didn't let the contact cement fully set up before I cut into the fins, so I have some layer separation on the bevels where the saw pulled against it. Now I can just ignore it because I have before, but instead I'm going to use some gap filler from Prop Monkey Studios to fill in the major gaps. And since now I'm spending time using a filler, it would have been better to just wait for the cement to set overnight instead of waiting for the filler to dry and then get sanded. One of these days I'll learn. What I want to do next is, I guess, the belt buckle. This version of Mechagodzilla is from the 70s, so he has a large belt buckle. You know, it just makes sense. I cut my base layer from some 4mm What the foam. Then I cut 2 more layers of 2mm and 4mm HD foam. The chevron in the middle is also 4mm foam. So there's one last thing I need to add right up here. And I think the easiest thing for me to do to make this little circle that goes here is to use a cat toy. Thank you, Jerry Rig Props. I really appreciate you sending me some more cat toys. How many layers of cat toy do I need? So I cut it right about at the yellow. So how many layers? Well, all of the red layer plus 2 others, about 3 layers. I cut the cat toy with my bandsaw, but a sharp hobby knife would work too. That might be a little more dimensional than it should be. Maybe it's should be a little less of a dome. Nah, I'm fine. Besides, it's a cat toy. I like it. With all the pieces cut, I can stick them all together with contact cement. Because these pieces were cut out and then stuck together, I need to sand the edges down with a grinding stone in my rotary tool. You know, or I could just leave the mismatched edges. That's always an option. On the backside, I add some layers of foam to ease the buckle over the 6mm belt. First, I add some 4mm foam, and then I add some 2mm foam. When I glue the buckle on, it'll gradually fit from the belt down to the crotch seam. And there's a triangle that pokes up from the buckle. I glue some 4mm foam for that too. With the buckle made, I can trace where it needs to go on the front. The pencil lines will help me with glue placement. To make the fenders that go around each leg, I measure the leg hole with a ruler that I made from 6mm foam. Now, because the ruler is made from the same material that I plan to use, I can get a very accurate length of foam that I need to cut. And as this is a curved cut, my razor knife is the best choice to make it. Now, it's hard to see here, but I cut a 45-degree angle into the curved side, so this piece will stick out when I glue it to the body. Both are now cut on a 45. That's good. That means I can actually wrap it around and get the flange that goes around the legs. I force a deeper curve into the front foam while gluing these pieces on, and the seams have 2 coats of contact cement. After they're glued on, I trim the edge on the inside. Now, this may not be needed, but it felt like the right idea. So the last big major piece I need to figure out is how the tail is going to attach. Now, I spent a good hunk of my day yesterday using Inkscape, tracing over one of the production photos of Mechagodzilla so I could figure out exactly what the shape of all the tail pieces were. Then I scaled it up to the size that I wanted it to be to make for my costume, which let me know exactly how big the root of the tail needed to be to fit on the part here. So while working with that, I've got my template cut out. This is just simply the side panel. There's still an arc that goes across the top and the bottom, but this is the piece that needs to attach here, and this becomes the base of the tail. The entire rest of the tail, I guess it'll kind of make this type of shape, it's upside down. The rest of the tail will build off of this, and the tail is only like 38 inches long. It's not a long tail, which is one of the reasons why I was attracted to the costume. It wasn't gonna be the Godzilla tail that's like a body and a half long. This is only like a meter. So I need to cut this piece out and figure out how it attaches. And then I can put the spines on. Then I can paint it practically. I traced my paper pattern onto some 4mm What-the foam, and then slowly worked out how much of an arc I needed to cut to fit the piece onto the butt. Then I did the other side, which has a different curve, of course. Once they're glued on, I add some extra tabs of 6mm foam. This tail is going to need all the extra support it can get. I had a good idea on the size of each part that I needed from my drawings, but I still had to figure out the curve of my handmade costume. The connector piece is kind of an arrowhead shape. I have a 20mm EVA foam dowel glued inside to help hold that bend. And I'm fully guesstimating the connection here. I decided to go ahead and just glue it together, but if it doesn't work, I can always cut the seam and then add in some elastic. I cut the center fin to fit around the base of the tail, and I used some paper to keep the contact cement from sticking until I'm ready to have it be in place. Just pull the paper out and then press the parts together. I also had to cut each fin to fit over the 6mm belt. There are 2 small panels across the back. I cut these from 6mm foam. And now I can glue on the belt buckle. I wanted to wait until last for the buckle because I didn't want to bend that triangle that's on the top. Well, that's a big pair of robot underwear. Well, I'm almost done. This is actually, this really kind of came together a lot quicker tonight than I thought it would. This is pretty cool. I need to put all the rivets on it, and there's a couple of really big ones I need to put on the tail. And then I need to, of course, make there's gonna be a piece of vinyl that's gonna go in here that'll actually tuck underneath the top parts. The 2 pieces can be on top of each other, right? So I'm gonna make a tube of vinyl about 10 inches tall or so. That's just a ring that goes around it with the pair of suspenders. So I can put all the pants on first and then put the top on over it. And that'll actually connect the 2. And believe it or not, that's all it was in the original suit. It was just the lower legs with like fishing waders practically coming off of it, right? And then the top of the body slipped over it. And that's all it is, which is nice. So that's all I'm gonna do. On the back of the tail here, I've got a mark because each tail section has a large rivet, some sort of large dome piece that goes on here. And I've got what I want to use. I managed to find some smaller cat toys. Okay, these aren't really cat toys. These are just some 30mm EVA balls, and I was able to get them in any color I wanted, so I said, yeah, great, give me black. I'm gonna need to cut a few of these, not just for the tail, but also on the legs, so I'm glad I've got plenty. Cutting them in half feels like they're still gonna be too big. So instead, I can cut them into thirds using a popsicle stick as a guide. Now this stick is 10 millimeters wide, so it's perfect. The 1/3 dome looks much better to me, and the method for cutting them out is simple enough that I can do it 14 more times pretty easily. I start to mark where all the rivets need to go. I just dot every inch about half an inch from the edge, and there's going to be 2 rows in the belt, and 1 row around each leg. What I'm using for rivets are the centers from the Foam Armory's EVA foam chainmail. It's really convenient to have a bag full of these little circles of foam, and just a dot of super glue will hold them in place. And as they are so easy to attach, I can replace them as they get knocked off, because they will. When I take them to a con, it'll happen, I'll have to replace some. And it doesn't feel like I'm gonna run out of these rivets, but if I do, I could buy some more chainmail just to get the rivets. For the belt buckle, I mark every half inch to place the rivets, and I glue some more of the rivets on. As I get to the end of supergluing, after doing both rows in the belt and both the leg fenders, I have enough glue on my finger that the foam wants to stick more to me than it does to the belt buckle. So that's it. That's all the pieces that are gonna go onto the Mecha underwear. I mean, I still need to make the legs, right? But that's gonna be another video. All I gotta do with this now is spray it black and then paint it silver. And then I gotta make the little fabric ring that goes around the middle so I can actually put it on. I coat the lower body with black Plastidip as a primer for the silver acrylic paint. And I use my small touch-up gun to spray silver acrylic paint over the whole thing. It takes a couple of coats to really fully cover everything. For the waist, I'm sewing 2 layers of fabric. I have a canvas duck cloth that I want for a backing, and then the silver vinyl for the outside. The duck cloth will let me glue the fabric to the body with contact cement, because contact cement's gonna peel right off of vinyl. Now because of that, I had also sewn a 2mm piece of foam to the front of the vinyl so I can glue the top of the belt buckle back down. I had also sewn in a pair of elastic suspenders from a back brace so I can hold everything up. And if these aren't strong enough, I can always replace them with real suspenders later. Joe wasn't able to come into the shop and help this week, so the airbrush details that I typically do are gonna happen when I get the legs built. All the materials I used for this project I already had on hand or I picked up locally. I put a part list in the description. I've got myself a mechanical egg suit. Well, there's not much to see because there's a bunch of table in the way, but all right, I'll get another apple box. Hold on. And so there you have it. I've made myself robot shorts. There's a weird stance I'm gonna need to do with it. It's the whole stand like a cowboy thing, right? I can't stand normal because I got too much material between my legs. So I'm gonna have to get used to the weird crouchy, you know, the monster stance. This is what I'm gonna need to be doing anyway. Now I'm the only one here tonight. That's why I haven't got the rest of the stuff on. But like I can't put the back spines on because I don't have them. I mean, I can't reach them. I can't, that requires an assistant. But I've got myself a pair of fancy robo shorts and I've got, you know, I got fine mobility for what I need. Everyone, look at my shorts. All right, well, you know, this is what the whole episode is about, right? This is kind of fun. Okay, well, I have no idea what to say. This is all pretty entertaining. I've never attempted to make a pair of armored shorts before. I've got a pair now, or maybe these are armored lederhosen. But at any rate, I know there's gonna be lots of different ways that you can put a pair of diapers on your kaiju. But this is how Odin makes. I've got me robo lederhosen. All right. Well, let's put the top on. Oh
Okay, keep your pants on. You know Bubble Scorpion's gonna show up. I'm coming for you, DD Hard. You know who you are. Yeah. Bubble Scorpion's real, and he's got the daddy pants on now. What a one-dimensional character. Where am I supposed to go with this? I keep building stuff. I mean, I can give him guns, I guess, but I mean, I don't know. It seems like I should give him the Barrett arm. Maybe I should do that. Let's give him the Barrett arm. Let's pull that down. Now we're getting somewhere. Now Bubble Scorpion's becoming a real threat. This is what we needed. More toys. More toys. Alrighty. I think Bubble Scorpion needs more lights in the head. Yeah, that's what he needs. He needs more lights up top. Yep. Why is Bubble Scorpion almost more fun? Because he's ridiculous.
I want to thank the Trash Panda, Joey Flores, and all of my Patreon supporters. My Patreon support is the #1 thing that makes this show possible. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe. Have an idea for something for me to make? Please leave a comment below. And if you make any of these projects, you can send me a picture.